Elena is on this call, and then some of the other people, of course, aren't able to make it because they're in Norway, and then I don't know what the other women are doing. But anyway, I'm really excited to be here and share my upcoming coaching group. So I've been what I would call, I guess, a self-title would be a healing arts therapist for the last 20 years, and that's been an integration of a lot of different tools, including somatic therapy and somatic body work and holistic pelvic care and coaching and energy healing and um, I, so many tools, so many tools. And when I came into Megan's group, I was really struggling. I was in a master's of counseling program thinking I was going to integrate counseling into my existing body of work. And I was having so much internal resistance, like, that just doesn't fit well with me. I don't want to have to diagnose people. I want to be able to use all of my skills. I specialize in working with women. I really wanted to be able to use the education without having to conform to the legalities and the diagnostics and the assessments, and then having to create a treatment plan around a diagnosis rather than just meeting someone where they're at. And really the disconnect came when I was thinking about the women I've worked with for the last 20 years. And I've worked primarily with women, but some men for the last 20 years. And they come in with all kinds of issues, pelvic pain, pain with sex, feeling totally disconnected from their bodies, can't make decisions. Like if I ask them to, like, what do you really want? They're like, I don't know. I don't know what my husband would think, or what would my mom say, or so they're totally disconnected from their own inner knowing, their own body's wisdom. And if anyone on here is, on birth control, this isn't a slam about that, but birth control suppresses the body's natural hormones. And so women being disconnected from their bodies in that way and not really understanding how their bodies work, um, not even knowing what their anatomy is. Like if I were to ask them, what's your sex life like, or what are you doing for pleasure, or just like the blank stare, like, what do you mean? Like, are you really asking me that? And I'm like, yeah, we're really asking you this because as a holistic pelvic care therapist, when women come into my clinic, or the clinic where I work 1.5 days a week, and then I have my own practice on Zoom, and I'm asking these questions, and they're just like, first of all, embarrassed, or can't even relate to what I'm asking, or feeling ashamed. That's a huge one. And so I started thinking, like, okay, what I'm doing, I want to be able to serve these women in a much bigger capacity than just doing holistic pelvic care, which is a very specific modality with internal body work. Kind of like, when you go get a massage, they do external massage. Holistic pelvic care is working internally on the vulva and the vagina and sometimes the rectum, um, with a specific goal of alleviating pain. So women with pain with sex or incontinence. Anyway, I'm starting to see, like, there's a huge disconnect. Like women who can't get in touch with their bodies, can't make decisions, huge anxiety, disconnected from their bodies, in ways that are medical, but also energetic, if that makes sense. So when I was in Megan's group, the seeds had already been planted, but Megan actually challenged me. She's like, so what are you going to do about this? And I'm like, yeah, I kind of been hiding behind all of these modalities that are safe and sanctioned, but are disconnected. So when I started looking at what that would look like to put all of these tools together to support women in coming into their bodies, coming into their intuition, coming into their personal power, um, having a better sex life. I mean, who doesn't want that? I do. um, and no pain with sex. I'm just thinking, like, oh, anxiety, the huge anxiety. They're all connected. So I started looking at all of the tools that I have and the ways that I was working disconnectedly, like I'm treating this and I'm treating this. And all of a sudden the light bulb went off. And I was like, holy fucking shit. Like, I know how to do this. Like, I can put a group together for women. I'm doing it anyway professionally. I'm just not doing it in this really cohesive way. So I started doing some research, and I'm going to share some, this is boring stuff, but it's actually really interesting. Um, oh, numbness, don't trust their bodies. So do you guys know how many women in the United States have hysterectomies every year? Anyone want to take a guess? 600,000. 600,000 women getting hysterectomies, not because they actually really need them, because their doctors don't know how to effectively treat pelvic pain. I would guess that maybe a small percentage of them actually need the hysterectomy, but what happens when you have pelvic pain and your doctor says, "Oh God, we got to take that out," it creates, I don't know if, oh, I actually, teaching moment. Okay, so this little thing in here is called the uterus. Women, most women have one. If you've had yours surgically removed, I'm sorry. But in front of the uterus is the bladder, and then behind the uterus is the rectum. I don't know if you guys can see where, I don't even know where I'm at. See myself. I don't even, oh, there I am.
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We can see
So
it.
when you have your uterus removed, it creates this empty space and your organs start prolapsing. And they can actually fall out, or they can create worse pain that can create scar tissue. Um, and the organ itself has a consciousness. Most people don't even know that. There's a consciousness that you're disconnected from. And when you have that surgically removed, there's still an energetic imprint from that organ that further creates disconnect. And it can create problems in the rest of the body, like jaw pain, shoulder pain, pain in your knees. So years down the road, like 2 to 5 years after a hysterectomy, often the symptoms will come back that the person was originally having because the energy of what was going on hasn't been corrected. And then they'll start developing other things that the doctor then doesn't know that they're related. So this is where I come in. I'm like, why don't we try a less invasive approach than taking your uterus out? And why don't we do some energetic work? Not woo woo, like I don't have a crystal ball. It's like the energy of the consciousness of the cells in the body and the uterus and the tissues in the vulva and the vagina and the cervix. They all have consciousness. Like the cervix is the acupuncture point to the heart. If you have a hysterectomy, like energetically, what you're doing to your body on an emotional, energetic level is like basically like heart disconnect, like complete heart disconnect. So when I mentioned earlier, women have disconnected from their bodies, then you introduce like a hysterectomy and then you further disconnect them from their bodies. It's horrendous. Okay, I'm gonna get off the little hysterectomy stance. Okay, incontinence. Anybody want to guess how many women have incontinence? I'm not even talking like 65-year-old women. I'm talking like women in their 30s, 40s. 65% of women have incontinence.
Wow. I
Yeah,
imagine that going through childbirth too can be connected to that.
yeah.
Wow.
But also just being disconnected energetically and physically, when we're disconnected from, like I call it from like basically like the belly button down, when you're disconnected, you have what's called an energy leak. And instead of your diaphragm, like the diaphragm is connected to the pelvic floor. So when you inhale, the pelvic floor should drop. And when you exhale, the pelvic floor should raise. When you're disconnected from your body, most people breathe with their chest. They don't take big belly breaths. They're not activating their pelvic bowl. And that creates a disconnect with the bladder, which is right in front of the uterus. And so it'll start creating incontinence. and it creates an energy leak that comes out of the pelvic floor because the person isn't engaging it with their breath. The woman, um, and too, but this is about women. Um, and pain with sex. And this is only of the people who report it, but 1 in 7. And I can tell you that in my work, in the clinic where I work, and in the coaching work that I do, it's much higher than that. Women who just take one for the team because their partner wants sex, whether they're in a heterosexual or bisexual or pansexual, doesn't really matter what the gender of the partner is. If you have something being inserted like a dildo or a toy or a penis, women who just suffer in silence or they stop having sex. Like, and the reason, I guess I should say that the reason that I even got involved in all of this work was because I suffered with pain with sex for 6 years, and I can't tell you how many providers I went to. I had ultrasounds, I had body work, I had energy healing and like nothing worked until I found somebody who I got, she did holistic pelvic care, and then I got trained in that. And then I started adding in all of my other tools with that. It's pretty sad. Oh, low back pain. 53% of women have low back pain. And a lot of it is related to what's going on in their pelvic bowl. So when I was putting this coaching group together, I thought, okay, so it's all connected. Digestion is connected to pelvic pain. Low back is connected to the pelvis. The vagus nerve runs through the whole body. It starts in the neck, and it runs through all of like the heart and the lungs and all of the digestive organs. And then there's some, in the medical community, there's some controversy about whether it ends in the digestive organs or if it goes down into the cervix. And in my experience working with women, it always goes down into the cervix and the pelvic floor because it interfaces with a couple of nerves that run down on the inside of the pelvic bowl and can create tension, the pudendal nerve and the pubic nerve. Um, so when I started putting all of this together, I was like, oh my God, jaw pain, that's connected to the pelvis. Anxiety, vagus nerve, not breathing deeply, digestion, it's all connected. So I created a coaching group that starts in July. It's a 4-month coaching group where we meet 3 times a month. It's the first 3 weeks of the month, and then there's an integration week, but it's 2 hours each week, and it's recorded. And I offer home play practices in between each coaching group to augment what we're doing in the group, which is going over the anatomy. Like, what parts do you have? How do they work? Like everything that I've read in most medical textbooks. Like I used to teach anatomy, and what's being taught in the medical textbooks is not what I'm experiencing in the treatment room or in the coaching session. Like most women don't even know how their cervix works, how their clitoris works, what makes them squirt or not squirt. So we go over anatomy in detail, and we go over. Let's see, I'm trying to go from memory here. Is my website's down. We work on like self-worth and what are the self-talk messages that you received as a child, both about your body and your worth and who you are in the world as a woman. And I know that not everyone identifies as woman, so that might be she, they, or however people identify. So we go over anatomy, we go over self-worth, we talk about the impact that the media and religion have on our beliefs about who we are in our bodies. We talk about chakras and the way that the chakras interface with the endocrine system and the nervous system, and how that can create a disconnect with our bodies and our intuition. We talk about shadow selves, which is a topic I love. So shadow selves are when you're a child and I don't know, let's say you're a little girl, and we live in a body and our bodies are designed for pleasure. And if you are touching yourself in a pleasurable way and your parents take your hand away, it creates a disconnect so that like if you get punished or if your parents take your hand away, you learn like, oh, self-pleasure masturbation is bad. So the parts of you that enjoyed pleasure become lost. You actually disconnect from them so that you can earn your parents' approval. And then a lot of times we'll create the false self over that that has rules that conform to the ways that we're raised. And then we'll start judging that false self because it's not our authentic self. And that's then once we start judging that, we'll go into the shadows. So we do a lot of excavation of the shadow self and the subpersonalities that get developed out of in response to the ways that we're raised. Um, we also work a lot on the vagus nerve and the stress response and stimulating the vagus nerve in a variety of ways to help calm the anxiety down. We do a lot of breath work, a lot of guided visualization, and specific coaching, like de-armoring practices for internal work on the pelvis. So, I'm not there with you, but I guide people through the de-armoring practices so that they can really get in touch with the consciousness and the energy of their, like the vulva and the vagina and the cervix, and really start falling in love with themselves at a really deep level. Um, yeah, I'm noticing some head nodding and some like writing notes. Are there any questions? I'm talking a lot because I wasn't sure how much time. Well,